Hey guys, it is I, the Comics Kid 2099, and I am filming this video on the same day that I filmed my Iron Man 3 review, the same day that I went to see Iron Man 3. And you'll be getting this sometime next week, but for me right now it is May 3rd, and this is an episode of I Stand Alone. If you have never seen me do one of these videos before, the basic premise is I find a single issue. So far, it's always been issues that I already own, but it's an issue that I read it by itself. I don't read an entire story arc. I don't do any preparation to read this story. I read a single comic book, and I decide if the comic stands by itself, or does it stand alone. And then I say yay or nay. And in honor of Iron Man 3 coming out, well, for me it came out today, I am going to do issue 167 of Iron Man. This is written by Denny O'Neil, and I do not know who drew this. I am sorry, I should have been a little bit more prepared. A gentleman named Luke McDonnell, or McDonnell, I'm not sure. So anyway, as you can see from this cover, this has got Obadiah Stane. There it is. This has Obadiah Stane in it. Now, for those of you who are really only familiar with Iron Man via the movies, you might remember Obadiah Stane. He was played by Jeff Bridges in the first Iron Man movie. I am one of those people. I am really only familiar with Iron Man through the movies. I have read maybe 2 Iron Man stories. I think I have one Marvel Iron Man graphic novel and then a couple of Ultimate Iron Man stories. So, really, I'm not a hard Iron Man fan. I've read just a few stories here and there. And after watching the Iron Man movie today, I thought, you know, I haven't done an I Stand Alone video in a while. What if I did an issue of Iron Man? And my main goal here is to see if you are a fan of the movies, can you read any old issue of Iron Man and will it make sense? Well, fortunately, this issue does stand by itself. It has been over a year, probably, since I read an issue of Iron Man from this run by Denny O'Neil. So it had been a good long while since I read anything that these characters were referring to. But fortunately, during this time, this was sometime in the mid-80s, early to mid-80s, during this time, if you hadn't ever read an issue before, the writers were very good about catching you up to speed during the issue. So, sometimes it might seem a little silly if Iron Man is explaining to himself, this is similar to something that happened to me 3 months ago. In reality, he probably wouldn't be saying that to himself because, you know, he already knows what happened to him 3 months ago, so he doesn't need to explain that to himself. But if you've never read another issue of Iron Man before, or if it's been over a year since you read an issue of Iron Man, then things like that can be very helpful to catch you up to speed really quickly. As far as if you are a fan of the movies and you only know Iron Man through the movies, can you read this comic and will it make sense to you? That's a little more iffy. On the one hand, I think the basic principle is still there. In the movie, Obadiah Stane was a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. He pretended to be a friend to Tony, he hired a bunch of people to kill Tony, and then he tried to take over Tony's company. That's not exactly what's going on with Obadiah here. In this case, he is still trying to take over Stark Industries, but instead of pretending to be a friend, Tony pretty much recognizes that Obadiah is a scumbag. And as far as I know, this version of Obadiah was never friends with Anthony Stark and was never friends with Tony Stark. He has, from day one, been trying to take over this company, and he makes no bones about it. Also, the presentation of Obadiah is a little strange. Not just his motives, but the way he is presented. It's kind of hard to tell here, but his way of dressing up is really strange. He's got these beads here, and I'm not sure if those are just decorative beads, or if he thinks that they give him power. I really don't know. And then he's got this goofy-looking jacket. It really, not to be crass, it really does kind of make him look a little like a 1970s pimp, which is really weird. It's not a good look for him. So if you have seen the Iron Man movie with Jeff Bridges, and you know Obadiah Stane to be a villain, he's very classy, he dresses nice, he's very suave, even though he's an evil man, that's not really what you're getting here. You're getting a guy who has this really weird amulet thing on his head. You can't really see because Iron Man is in the way, but there's like this black thing on his head. I actually thought that that was the Eye of Agamotto from the Doctor Strange comics. It looks exactly like that. It's a circle with a whole bunch of little circles that surround it. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think that's actually supposed to be like a chess piece. When you see the Queen, it has the little circles around the top to signify like the crown. I think that's supposed to be like the bird's eye view of a chess piece. There's actually a panel here where somebody is holding a chess piece, and let me see if I can, you see that right there? I think that's what's going on in Obadiah's head. It's really weird though. I don't understand why Obadiah has this decorative chess piece on his head. I do understand that this version of Obadiah Stane basically treats life as a chess match. And that's okay. That's something that we really didn't get in the movie. One thing I wasn't especially crazy about with the film version of Obadiah Stane is that he's basically just a greedy businessman. And he gets into the armor at the end of the movie because it's a superhero movie, and the superhero has to have somebody to fight. But this guy is not a supervillain, at least not yet. He's just a really smart guy who's trying to take over a business. Now, granted, he does dress very weird, and there's definitely some decorative things going on here that are a little strange, but he's not exactly a supervillain. He's just a little bit of an eccentric, normal villain. I should say, and this is maybe breaking the fourth wall a little bit in the series of I Stand Aloneness, but Obadiah Stane does eventually put on a giant suit of armor and becomes the Ironmonger, much like he did in the actual film. But even then, I'm pretty sure it happened in a totally different way than it did in the film. However, since that doesn't happen in this issue, I will not discuss that any further. One through line that's happening in this comic that is pretty much what Iron Man is known for in the comics that hasn't actually been touched on in the movies is Tony's alcoholism. Now, in the movies, we've seen Tony drink quite a bit, and there was even one point in Iron Man 2 where he gets drunk. I mean, absolutely trashed. And that kind of comes back to bite him in the butt later in the movie. But there's no point in any of the movies so far where we've had a scene where Tony is like, okay, I'm an alcoholic, I need to stop drinking, and he has his little battle with a demon, or whatever you want to call it. We haven't really had that in the films. In the comics, before the films even started, that was basically what Tony was known for. If you said, Iron Man, tell me about him, you would probably say, well, he was an alcoholic, and then he had this story where he beat being an alcoholic, or whatever. Now, I haven't actually read the story Demon in a Bottle, and that goes along very well with this series of videos in that I don't have to read Demon in a Bottle to understand that Tony is struggling with alcoholism. This issue opens with Tony reaching for a bottle of alcohol. Somebody put it in his room, and he's tempted by it. He almost tries to drink from it, and then he throws the bottle. And then a little later, he has a confrontation with Obadiah Stane, and he sees a pub, and he's like, I could really go in there. I could just have some comfort from the bottle. But then it's like, no, I can't do this. I need comfort elsewhere. And I don't want to spoil what happens. I know this comic book is over 20 years old, but I'm not going to spoil the big thing that happens. But Tony does seek comfort elsewhere. And, surprise, surprise, Obadiah has, in a sense, beaten him because this source that Tony tries to seek comfort from is actually being provided by Obadiah. And just when Tony thinks he has his feet firmly planted on the rug, Obadiah pulls the rug out from under him. The flowers are still standing. And Tony is as low as he can go, and he just says, you know what, that's it. I wash my hands of all of this, I give up, and he picks up the bottle and he starts drinking from it. Now, this is basically the second biggest thing, or maybe the first biggest thing, that really differentiates this comic book series from the films. Tony in the films, he drinks, but I don't think he necessarily thinks he has a problem. And seeing where the films have been going this whole time, I don't think we're ever going to see him say, I have a problem, I need to throw away the bottle. I don't think we're ever really going to get that story. Now, if you had asked me back in 2008, I would have said, yeah, probably, maybe for 2 or 3. Now, I don't really think that's going to happen. However, there was a time when that was what Tony was known for. Now you could probably say he's known for a little bit more because he's become quite a bit more popular since the movies started, but it's still something huge that he is known for. And at this point in the comics, he had actually already had the Demon in a Bottle story, and then Denny O'Neil was, I guess you could say he was kind of doing it in a more prolonged fashion. Like I say, I haven't read Demon in a Bottle, but from what I understand, he just kind of, at the end of the story, says, oh, I'm an alcoholic, and then he just beats it all at once. There's not really a whole lot of subtlety to it, from what I understand. And so, this actually takes place over the course of most of Denny O'Neil's run. Like I say, I'm not going to really discuss those other issues because this is an I Stand Alone feature. But that is something that you should definitely seek out if you are interested in seeing Tony have this long-running, recurring battle with alcoholism. It's a very interesting thing, and for that alone, I really wish that Marvel would just get off their butts and put all of Denny O'Neil's Iron Man run into trade paperback. Why not? I mean, Iron Man is a pretty popular movie franchise. I think that people would buy it. I certainly know I would. Do it, Marvel. Just do it. Yeah, do it. And so, that's really all I have to say. This issue is a pretty fantastic standalone issue. It has a concise beginning, middle, and end. There's a confrontation with the villain. There's even an action fight with one of the villain's pawns. Actually, I think he's really more like a rook or a knight, not necessarily a pawn, but you know what I mean. And it makes you want to come back for more without actually just being a story that stops. I mean, this is a complete story, but there is a cliffhanger that makes you want to come back for more. This is really what I wish Marvel would do with all of their comics nowadays. In a post-Brian Michael Bendis world, most comic books are written in such a way where the complete story is written and then it's divided up into 6 or 7 or 12 chapters, and then each chapter is not really a standalone story, it's just an incomplete chapter of a larger story. And I really don't care for that style of writing. I much rather would read stories that are complete stories, but then you can go and read them over the course of a much larger story, and it makes sense both ways. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. I definitely think that this issue does stand alone, and if you see any issues from Denny O'Neil's run on Iron Man, I would definitely suggest picking them up. That is really a fantastic series. That's where Rhodey actually becomes Iron Man for the first time. So Rhodey as his own hero, that got its start in Denny O'Neil's run. So yeah, you should probably go and read these. Like now, what are you doing watching this video? Read some Iron Man by Denny O'Neil. Yeah, I say that, I'm not even really that much of an Iron Man fan, but I really have enjoyed everything from Denny O'Neil's run that I've read. And I really wish Marvel would just put these in several little hardcover trade paperback things. I'm not picky. Just do it, Marvel. Do it. So that's about all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will be back in a week or so with another I Stand Alone video. But until then, keep an eye out for other videos that I do throughout the rest of the week. I'll see you then.